On paper, Danielle Stafford was the quiet success story society is built to reward. A university graduate with a degree in engineering, she held a respectable, steady job at the Swift Group, a major manufacturer in Hull. Her payslips arrived like clockwork, and her bank account reflected a life of prudent savings and careful management. She had no criminal record, no known associations with the city's underbelly, and nothing in her demeanor suggested a life lived on the edge. But behind the meticulously crafted facade of normalcy, another Danielle Stafford existed. This version commanded a different kind of enterprise zone that operated in cash, whispers, and burner phones. This Danielle was the architect of a sprawling Class A drug empire, a business that afforded her a lifestyle her engineering salary could never explain. For 3 years, she balanced two worlds, the daylight world of blueprints and boardrooms, and the shadow world of heroin and cocaine. It was a masterpiece of deception, a double life so perfectly compartmentalized that it seemed impenetrable. But all empires, no matter how carefully constructed, have a single point of failure. For Danielle Stafford, that point was a silver Audi, a heavy foot on the accelerator, and one fateful turn onto a quiet city road. This is the story of how a simple speeding ticket unraveled the quiet reign of a drug queenpin. The end of a spring day was settling over Hull on May 12, 2020. The light was fading as a silver Audi TT cut through the streets with an impatience that drew unwanted attention. Behind the wheel, Danielle Stafford was driving recklessly, overtaking other cars and cutting corners as she navigated from Priory Road towards Hotham Road South. It was the kind of driving that patrol officers are trained to spot, not necessarily sinister, but careless enough to warrant a stop. When the police pulled her over in the car park of the Odd Bottle off license on Wold Road, it was for a routine traffic violation. There were no sirens, no high-stakes pursuit. The officers approached the driver's side window, expecting a simple conversation about road safety. But as Stafford rolled down her window, a faint but distinct aroma drifted out into the evening air. The unmistakable smell of skunk cannabis. In that instant, the nature of the encounter changed. Stafford, however, appeared calm, almost composed. When asked about the smell, she reached over and handed the officers a small, insignificant-looking silver wrap containing 2 buds of cannabis. It was hers for personal use, she claimed, and that was all she had. But the officers' instincts, sharpened by years on the streets, told them there was more to the story. Her composure felt practiced, her confession too quick. A search of the Audi began. Tucked away inside the car, they found more bags of cannabis, including a large food bag stuffed behind a seat. An empty tub, crusted with drug residue, hinted at a larger scale of use or distribution. The total value of the cannabis found in the car alone was estimated to be over £1,300. This was already more than simple personal possession. Then, her phone began to ring, and ring, and ring. In the short time it took to process the initial findings and transport her to the custody suite, her phone lit up with over 30 calls and 20 text messages. It was a relentless barrage of communication, the frantic signature of a dealer whose customers were getting anxious. As the police car pulled into the station, one of the officers noticed Stafford shifting uncomfortably in her seat, subtly adjusting her waistband. "Do you have anything else hidden on you?" an officer asked. A moment of hesitation. The mask of composure finally cracked. Stafford admitted there was something more. "It's not mine," she insisted, her voice now laced with panic. "I don't know what it is. I shoved it down my joggers when you pulled me." From between her legs, she produced a plastic bag. Inside were 56 individual wraps of crack cocaine, street-ready, and valued at £2,800. This was the turning point. This wasn't a user caught with a little extra. This was a calculated, organized dealer caught with her inventory. The traffic stop was over. A major criminal investigation had just begun. And within hours, The police would be at her front door, ready to uncover the secrets it held. The police descended on Hallgate, Cottingham, with the certainty that they were not dealing with a low-level street pusher. The sheer volume of drugs in the car, the incessant phone calls, and the desperate attempt to hide the cocaine all pointed to a structured, profitable operation. From the outside, Stafford's three-bedroom home was indistinguishable from any other on the quiet, respectable street. But inside, it told the story of her secret empire. After forcing entry, the first discovery was hiding in plain sight. On a living room table sat a large banana box, not filled with fruit, but with herbal cannabis worth an estimated 2,500 pounds. Nearby were digital weighing scales and food, bags the standard tools of the trade. When confronted, Stafford admitted this portion of the cannabis was hers, a small concession in the face of overwhelming evidence. But the real discoveries lay deeper. In the bedroom, officers found stashes of cash hidden among her belongings. 430 pounds in one bag, 670 pounds in another. Bundles of 2,350 pounds and pound 1,480 were tucked away in different corners. On the floor was a small safe, and inside it, another 7,580 pounds in notes. She denied the money was hers. The search moved to the rear garden. There, a coal bunker sat partially concealed. An officer moved a bag of coal bricks to find, buried beneath a large glass jar. It was packed with meticulously sealed drug wraps, protected from the elements. This was the main stash, hidden with care and forethought. Inside were 270 wraps of crack cocaine, with a street value of 13,500 pounds, and another 205 wraps of heroin, valued at 4,100 pounds. This wasn't a chaotic mess. It was a well-managed inventory. Upstairs, in a small box room, the cash discoveries continued. One bundle contained 9,100 pounds. Others were scattered in envelopes, drawers, and folded into clothing. Pound 1,668, 700 pounds, 550 pounds, 165 pounds. Some notes were even found pressed behind a television set, banded and hidden behind the electronics. The total amount of cash seized from the house was a staggering 26,917 pounds. Every room had a purpose. Every hiding spot was deliberate. This wasn't the home of a casual user or someone being taken advantage of. This was the command center of a highly organized and lucrative business, run with a quiet control that was both methodical and chilling. As the physical evidence piled up, investigators began a deep dive into Danielle Stafford's finances, and the true scale of her deception came into focus. Her official life was a portrait of middle-class respectability. Her salary from Swift Group was paid into her bank account every month, but that's where the normal financial trail went cold. Investigators found that her wages sat largely untouched. There were no major withdrawals, no large transfers, and no records of significant spending that would align with a normal Lefano rent payments. No mortgage debits, no large shopping sprees. Yet, the life she was living was far from frugal. In 2018, she had become a homeowner twice over, purchasing a second property outright with her share of nearly 65,000 pounds paid entirely in cash. There was no mortgage, no loan application, just stacks of untraceable money. Her home was a treasure trove of luxury goods. Police cataloged 9 high-end watches and 3 authentic Louis Vuitton handbags. She had also taken multiple foreign holidays, but her bank accounts showed no evidence of these trips, no foreign currency exchanged, no flights or hotels booked, no overseas card activity. When questioned, Stafford had an explanation for everything. The expensive watches and handbags? They were fakes, she claimed. Cheap replicas from Turkey and Spain gifted to her by relatives. The cash used to buy her second property? That came from cashing in premium bonds, a stroke of good luck and savvy saving. She portrayed herself as someone who was simply careful with money. not someone funding a lavish lifestyle with illicit cash. But the prosecution's financial analysts painted a different picture. They laid out the cold, hard numbers. A modest engineer's salary on one side, and on the other, assets and a lifestyle worth well over £100,000 with no legal income stream to explain it. Her job didn't cover it. Her bank records didn't reflect it. The only business model that made sense of the black hole in her finances was the one fueled by the thousands of pounds of heroin, cocaine, and cannabis hidden in her home. In April 2023, Danielle Stafford, now 31, stood in the dock at Hull Crown Court. Dressed impeccably, she looked more like a young professional facing a corporate tribunal than a drug kingpin. She had entered pleas of not guilty to 3 counts of being concerned in the supply of Class A drugs, heroin and crack cocaine, and cannabis, and 1 count of possessing criminal property, the nearly 27 pounds, 000 in cash. Her defense, led by barrister Selma Mahmood, did not deny everything. They admitted Stafford supplied cannabis, portraying it as a minor, on-and-off transgression. But when it came to the Class A drugs, they argued she was not the architect of the operation, but a pawn. They introduced the narrative of a man from Liverpool, an acquaintance who she claimed had pressured her into storing the drugs and cash for him. She was, they argued, a woman in over her head, used by a more sophisticated criminal. They presented character references from former employers, highlighting her education, her past volunteer work, and her lack of previous convictions. But the prosecution, led by Nardan Bashia, systematically dismantled this defense with a mountain of evidence. They laid out the timeline, showing nearly 3 years of unexplained wealth accumulation. They pointed to the highly organized nature of the drug stashes separated, packaged for sale, and hidden across multiple locations. This wasn't the work of someone simply holding items for another. It was the mark of a manager. The prosecution highlighted the phone that rang non-stop during her arrest, clear evidence of an active drug line. Most damningly, they presented the forensic financial analysis. Her salary went in, but nothing came out to pay for her life. The second home paid in cash, the luxury goods, the holiday sit was all funded by an invisible, untaxed, and illegal source of income. As the trial progressed and the evidence mounted, the defense's position became untenable. The jury had already been sworn in when, in a dramatic turn, Stafford's legal team withdrew her not guilty pleas. She changed her plea to guilty on all 4 counts. The facade had finally crumbled under the weight of the prosecution's case. There was no longer a question of whether she had done it. The only question left was how long she would spend in prison. At the sentencing, Judge Mark Berry looked past the character references and the 11th hour guilty plea. He focused on the cold, hard facts of the operation Stafford had run for nearly 3 years. He flatly rejected her claims of being a mere custodian for someone else's criminal enterprise. "You were a street dealer in cocaine," he stated, his words cutting through the courtroom. "You had a significant amount of designer and expensive items and jewelry. I am not prepared to accept that it was fake." He noted the sophisticated nature of the concealment and the sheer quantity of both drugs and cash, calling the evidence against her strong, if not overwhelming. He also admonished her for the lateness of her guilty plea, which only came after a jury had been sworn in and the trial had begun. The final sentence was delivered, 7 years and 6 months in prison. But the reckoning was not over. Months later, the court reconvened for a Proceeds of Crime Act, POCA, hearing to strip Stafford of her ill-gotten gains. After a meticulous review of her assets, the value of the seized drugs, and the hidden cash, the court determined that her benefit from criminal conduct was £96,263. She was ordered to repay the full amount within 3 months. The deadline was set for early September 2025. If she fails to pay, she faces an additional 12 months in prison, a consequence designed to ensure that crime does not pay. The story of Danielle Stafford serves as a stark reminder that even the most carefully constructed double life can be brought down by a single mistake, and that the price of a hidden empire is one that is ultimately paid in years, freedom, and fortune.